good afternoon, and welcome to Alfred Music's webinar series, Learn, Teach, Play Online. My name is Michaela Graham, Senior Event Specialist for Alfred Music, and I will be running everything in the background for our session today. We are thrilled to host today's webinar introducing the Alfred Flex and Belwin Flex for band and strings. If you have any questions or comments for our presenters throughout the session, please feel free to drop it in the chat box. We love hearing your thoughts throughout the presentation. And we will have time for a Q&A at the end, but our presenters will be answering questions throughout as well. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our presenters today. We have Chris Bernotas, the Director of Instrumental School Methods and Repertoire for Alfred Music, and Vince Gassi and Mike Kamuf, a couple of our wonderful Alfred Music authors and clinicians. Hi, guys. Hey. I will toss it over to Chris.
Hi, everybody.
You guys got a little preview of our pal Vince Gassi from up north in Canada. And welcome also to Mike Kamuf. It's so great to be here with you guys. And as people join in, please continue to blow up the chat over there. And we're going to try to answer questions as we go along, as we talk about the new series, both new series, Alfred Flex and Belwin Flex. And I'm going to introduce some of that now. So you guys can disappear for a few minutes. They'll be back soon. And Vincent and Mike will also be answering questions in the chat. So the very first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about why this came about. Why was there even a need for these Flex series? Flex has been around for a long time. This is not a new discovery. And it's my belief that these are going to be so valuable and important well after we are through the time period that we're in now and moving forward after this. So we've been given a great opportunity to create from the ground up a product that has a lot of teacher influence and hopefully answers a lot of the questions that teachers had with their previous Flex experience. See what I did there? Okay, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to share my screen with you to talk a little bit about the product itself. Give me just a second to get my screen shared. Here we go. Okay, this is our website of alfred.com/flex. You can go to this later on and look at it a little bit more clearly and take your time to go through it. But it's really a great website to kind of explain a lot about what is going on. I do want to talk about how this came about. I mentioned the reason we're doing this, the need for teachers to have flexible material for teaching at home, for teaching at school, maybe in a small group, or any mixture in between. Odd instrumentation for whatever brought about that kind of situation for you. So products that I get involved with in the past, I always like to get a group of teachers together, a cohort of teachers together to bounce ideas around and to talk about what do you like, what don't you like, here's a new idea, or maybe it's an old idea with a new twist. What would you like to see in this product? What do you like about others that are out there? What don't you like about others that are out there? And this was kind of what we came up with, is an answer to a lot of those questions or concerns that teachers had about those products. They wanted something that you can use for any instrument. And I had a lot of teachers that I talked to that said, Chris, I know this is an unrealistic request, but I'd really love to have a part for everybody. If I have 5 flutes, 4 flutes, I want to be able to do these pieces with them. And at first I thought they were crazy. They were. And by the end result, after a lot of brainstorming and many different versions of this, we really came up with a lot of solutions. And that's what we like to do. We like to be solution-based. We have a problem, there's a need in the market. What can we do to help solve those problems and provide that? So here's some of the things that teachers came to me with that they were looking for help with. They wanted varied repertoire. They didn't want one grade level. They didn't want all pop tunes. They wanted varied stuff between concert literature, folk songs, and pop music, not one or the other. They wanted a wide mix of it. They wanted varying grade levels. A lot of these pieces kind of land in that grade 2 to grade 3 area. They wanted stuff all the way from grade 1 or grade half, all the way through the advanced level. They wanted there were some concerns, I'll get down to it a little bit later on in this part, but there were some concerns about the voicings and how to make these sound complete and full. There was big concern about guidance. How do I use these things? There's a lot of, here's the material, and I have no idea how to use it. So we came up with some ways to help with that, starting with this, a webinar to tell you, here's how we think you should use these. Ranges, concerns about ranges of products, making sure that they're appropriate and that they're going to work. How about having a score that's easy to follow and easy to keep track of? We're going to show that too. Optional piano to maybe fill in the gaps. Maybe you don't even have that many kids, or maybe you have a piano student, you want to have them involved. I've had that in my own program. I have a piano student, so I would pick a piece that has piano in it. But wouldn't it be great to have a lot of pieces that have piano? And something I'm extremely excited to mention is the photocopying permission for this. When we're putting together how we're going to distribute this, what makes the most sense is how are band directors going to use this? How are orchestra directors going to use this? They're going to use it how they need to use it. They're going to print out as many copies as they need for their students that are sitting in front of them. It's a flexible series. So we don't know what the makeup is going to be of your band. So you have permission to copy it. And for strings, I do want to highlight that these are really carefully edited with extra bowings and extra fingerings, realizing that this is going to be a mixed situation. It might be a string student sitting in your band, and you now have a part to give to them, and they have extra guidance because they're going to be playing on a lot of flat keys, which doesn't always sit so well. So we really had these expertly edited. I had a lot of help by Jim Palmer. If you know Jim Palmer, if you don't know Jim Palmer, you get to know him. And Danae Witter, our Suzuki editor, in making sure that we're making the best product for all students involved. And you're going to also notice there's a percussion track that is going to be available as a free download. This is so if you have to do remote learning and you want to make one of those videos, or you want to have your students practice along with a practice track of the percussion line, that's going to be available as a free download. Okay. Answering some of these questions. Yes, varying grade levels. You will see that throughout what we have today. We have a variety of pieces from the Alfred side, from Alfred Flex, and from the Belwin Flex, all grade levels and many different styles. To answer the teacher guidance, we have a Flex map. I'm extremely excited to share this Flex map with you. And it was just updated yesterday, and here is what it looks like. Teachers wanted guidance. So how do we do that? Here's what we have. This is what the score looks like. It's by transposition. So you can choose what instrument you can play. The comment to that was, hey, Chris, my tenor sax player is the best player in my band. They never play part one. Here, you're going to have part one. You can give your student part one, part two, part three, part four, or part five. You have 5 tenor saxes. You have 5 parts for your tenor saxophones. Here's the suggested instrumentation. If you want to pick from a menu of instruments, you can pick from that. Here's what it looks like on the score. But the real power of this chart is over here. Your part assignments. These are completely customizable. Unless I'm in your band room, I can't say part 1 should be Susie, part 2 should be this kid, part 3 should be that kid. That's what you do. You have your parts. You can put their names. You can put the instruments if you want to put the instruments, and you fill it out. And here's the cool part. This little gray line here, and this is somebody else's brilliant idea. If you line this up with the left-hand side of the score, stick a piece of tape on it, as you flip pages through the score, you're still going to see where it is. And I actually have a picture of that to show you on this page. Here you go. And this is what it'll look like in the score. Part 1's going to line up, part 2 is going to line up, 3, and so on. So as you are actually rehearsing this, you can see that, and you can see who it is that you've assigned the parts to. Go back to the web page for just a second. You're going to notice there's a 4-part teaching map. The reason for this is we talked about the teacher concern was, listen, on the page, part 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, they look balanced, but when you're sitting in the room, they're not actually balanced. Part 1 instruments, 2 instruments, 3 instruments, maybe that's where most of the kids are. Your part 4 and 5 instruments, those are ones that are like a little bit lighter in the enrollment. So they wind up looking balanced on the page, but they're not sounding balanced in actual production of making music. So what we did for the lower levels of music, up through grade 1.5, we made a 4-part teacher. We made a 4-part score to help give balance and confidence through all that. The other concern with that too is the way that some of these have been written in the past, which is part 1 is the melody, part 2 is maybe the counter melody, part 3 is some kind of mid-harmony or counter voice, part 4 and part 5 are some combination of accompaniment or bass line. Well, if you're a student that plays part 4 or part 5, you'll never see the melody again in your life. That's just the way that it is, because part 1 always gets the melody. Well, we're approaching that from a couple different ways. 1, you have all parts for all instruments. Number 2, we are going to construct these in a way that they're designed to have the instruments share the melody line throughout the scoring. So that means we look at these as like a brass quartet or a wind quartet or a string quintet. And write them like that with some independent lines that can kind of go through from the writing part. So we're trying to address those as we go through it. Ranges that work, I'll get to that in a second because that was a huge challenge, and I feel very confident that we've come to really answer that question really well. The clean layout, you've already seen it, and smart music. Yes, the smart music is, these files or pieces are going to become available in smart music. You'll be able to find them, you'll be able to assign them to your students, and if you have a band and orchestra together, you're teaching students from across the curriculum, you can assign them one of these pieces and you're all working from the same piece of music. Okay, to answer the question, let me just check my notes to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, the challenges. Some of the challenges in the scoring are with our friends, the clarinets, right? Because we have to consider the break. With our friends, the trumpets and treble clef baritones that maybe go too high or maybe go too low. So we have to think about them. And then we have those those awesome tenor saxes. And they really presented an interesting challenge because they all live in that B flat part, right? So you have the clarinets you've got to keep in the break area, and the trumpets, they can kind of go in there, but the tenor saxes have to be in the higher part of that. So as a way of making sure that we took care of that, we actually pulled the tenor saxes out of the score, and I'm going to show you a score, and put them underneath. So now your score on the page is those B flat instruments that you're most commonly going to see, but then you're going to have supplemental parts, 5 parts or 4 parts for tenor saxophone to pass out for those kids specifically so that they're in the right range as needed. I want to show you the detailed editorial notes that we came up with. And all of this is collaborative. All of this is the result of the work of many, many, many people, not just me. Brainstorming with teachers, composers, other editors, our engraving department, and our production and design, everywhere. So here's an editorial note for a grade half piece, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see it. I'm not going to read this to you, but I'm going to outline what the general things are. On the C parts, you're going to notice that there is a high and low part. Here it is very quickly. There's a high and low part. With the student parts, it is not like this. There is a C high part and a C low part, so you will see them separately. Same thing with the C instruments, bass clef, high and low, okay? So we just notated in the score. They're included as individual parts. Please don't be confused by that. We're trying to make this not confusing. The B flat parts, this is for up to grade 1.5. Part 1 may have notes that go above the break for clarinet. Alternative lower notes will not be provided. So those are the kids that can play above the break. Parts 2 through 4 may have notes that go above the break. However, every time that it does, there will be an alternate lower note for them to choose. That's up to you. You can differentiate your education. If you have a student that you think can go over the break, go for it. If you think they can't, give them the alternate note. And just so you know, those alternate notes do not appear on all of the second parts, just on those B flat parts. And then also parts that have more challenging ranges for trumpet. If it goes up to a G or an A, we definitely put lower options for that. And it goes down to a low A. I think everybody can handle that. And tenor saxophones can play to a low D without sounding too much like a Canadian goose. No offense, Vince. Divisi. We do not include divisi on the parts because we don't want it to be cluttered. So if there are 2 notes on the part, you can tell them which ones to play. And when they go back to 1 note, all students play. And if you only have one person on that part, they can pick which, you tell them which note to play. However, string parts, in an effort to make sure that we take care of the string parts so that students are supported there, we do mark divisi so that they don't think that they're double stops. And we do also identify a couple of our editorial markings that would include shifting with the dash, and also to let you know that some of the bowings, the slur patterns are not going to be the same for the strings as they would be for the winds to help make sure that we have the bowing work more fluently. That's the grade 1 and lower, grade 1.5 and lower. As we get to a grade 2 piece, the only thing that's really different here are the B flat parts. Now part 1 and 2, because now we're in a 5-part model, part 1 and 2 may have notes that go above the break. Parts 3 through 5 will have alternates. And then as we get to a grade 3, absolutely, yes, we will have grade 3, maybe even higher. We'll see how this works out. As you get to grade 3 and higher, all the clarinet, all the B flat parts may go above or below the break. And we will keep in mind, for sure, grade 3 ranges for the brass instruments. Okay, the next part. how the heck do you write these things? What a great question. And I will tell you this before I bring Vince and Mike back into this conversation. The first thing that I did after all the brainstorming and working on these and getting a concept together and trying to get it ready was I looked at a score and I looked at the 5-part model and I said, okay, I'm going to try like 8 measures of this and see how it works. I looked at a blank page and I was kind of horrified. I didn't know where to start. And I was literally going to just do like whole notes and half notes to try to figure it out. So then I thought, we can't do this. We have to find a better way to do this. And as a Finale user, I worked with our production department, our engraving department, to come up with some amazing templates to help us on the compositional side and arranging side figure out how to do this. I'm going to give you a quick tour of how this looks. I hope this is the kind of behind the scenes stuff that you might like to see, because I like to share it, but you maybe don't know what happens like all the time behind the music. So check this out. This is what I'm calling Staff Set 1. This is a representation of all of those 5 parts. So here's part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and part 5. And you can see those up here. Percussion is here, as you would see it. And here's our optional piano part. And it's important to see how all this works together. So when writing these or retrofitting these, we went back and had to basically rearrange it in a 5-part model and to see how it would work in this. Once you have this, you can go back to the full score and then put it in the various parts. So all the part 1s are the same, all the part 2s are the same, all the part 3s are the same, and so on. Then you have to go through and make sure that you make the right adjustments for all the instruments. How do you do that? Here are the string parts. So here's Ride Through the Valley as a string orchestra. And then I go through this, and I go through it, and I check all the ranges, I listen to it, I change octaves where needed to make sure that it works out and is playable and has the right bowings and everything else that needs to be there. Here's the next score set. These are our C instruments. And I want to point out to you, you see part 4 and part 5. So imagine this is 5 flutes. Part 1, part 2, and part 3 live in the score. Part 4 and part 5 are not on the score. They live outside of the score. However, you are going to get a copy of this part. You're going to get a part 4 and you're going to get a part 5. So you can pass it out to 5 flutes, 5 oboes, 5 violins, any 5 C instruments. Check this one out. How about our B flat instruments? And this is where we go in and we're checking to make sure that we're getting those range considerations for all the B flat instruments. And again, you're going to notice we're not considering the range of the tenor saxophone in this. Right now, we're considering mostly trumpet, clarinet, all of that. Here's our tenor saxes. And I love that we can do this because the byproduct of this is that this sounds great. When you play these back in these instrument ensembles, it sounds amazing. Okay, so there's tenor saxophone, our E flat instrument voices, going through, making sure that all the ranges work and that we're not crossing too many voices. And that is something that's also a note in the editorial note. You will have crossed voices in this. If I did this with 5 alto saxes, there will be crossed voices. So it's a great teaching opportunity to tell them, hey, make sure that when the melody is buried, that we adjust our balance appropriately, just like playing in any kind of a quartet or quintet ensemble. Okay, and here is our F instruments. And I want to point out to this one, they're out of order. One of the things in finales, we couldn't put them, they show up here in our score sets in score order. So this is part 3 and part 4, where the F instruments are in the real score. But here's part 1 for F horn, here's part 2 for F horn, and part 5 for F horn. So if you're lucky enough to have 5 French horns, you want to do this as a horn quintet, you can. Which, by the way, makes the grading of these a little bit interesting, right? Because this particular one is a grade 3, for sure a grade 3. But as a horn quintet, is it a grade 3 or is it maybe a grade 4? That's up to you to decide. And here is our low brass ensemble. Okay, so here we have our C bass clef instruments, most appropriately voiced for them. And pretty much everything sounds amazing as a low brass and percussion ensemble. And then we're back to our full score. That is a quick tour of finale and how we on the compositional side were able to use that. And that's what I'm talking about. Everything is so collaborative. And and going back and forth editorially. I went back and forth with our composers and arrangers, and we worked through this together, problem solving and trying to come up with the best solution possible for teachers in whatever scenario you are teaching in. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment here. And I'm going to bring back Vince and Mike. Hey guys, boom, boom.
Hey.
And I want to ask them a couple of questions, as these were a couple of my great teammates in working on these projects. What was your approach to taking the original orchestration of your piece and adapting it to this format? I'm going to have Mike answer that question first.
For me, I really wanted to make sure that the integrity of the music stayed there from the original grade 2 version of derivations and the original grade 1 version of Great Beginnings. I wanted to make sure that the integrity of the melodic lines was there. The integrity of the harmonic structure of the piece was still there. So that was kind of challenging because, you know, we come up, when this happens, there's a lot of range issues, and you want to make sure that, you know, that you're not destroying the integrity of the octaves and the lines. So a lot of care went and thought and went into the process of converting these pieces over to the Flex format. Just the score sets that Chris just showed us, those were incredibly helpful in as a composer in making sure that everything kind of fit logically. And like Chris mentioned, the voices are going to cross. There's no way we could have, you know, avoided that. But this is a great opportunity to take a chamber music approach, if needed, with your setup to perform this music, and just the task at first was really daunting. I think, you know, seeing all those, when we got the templates and the templates came through and you had all these blank blank measures and, you know, for the score, that was really a real daunting thing for us. But the more we worked through it as a group of writers, we were communicating constantly about what we were seeing in the templates and what was working and what wasn't, and we were trying to make rules for us to follow. We were constantly tweaking those rules but trying to make sure that we were coming up with a product and a piece of music that was going to be playable in various situations. So,
yeah, I just want to jump in on that. What Mike is saying is, when you create something from the ground up, you have the theoretical phase, and you have like, this looks great on paper, and these are the rules that are going to work. And then you have like, when you actually start doing it, and
it doesn't work. Right.
New things pop up. And that's been really exciting. It's been scary, but it's really exciting to be able to kind of filter some of those changes. And I've appreciated everybody's personal flexibility to bear with me with multiple emails. Hey, Mike, here's the new rule. Can you go back and check part 2? You know.
Well, it was a learning process for all of us, and it was really neat to be a part of. And if, you know, it's those tenor saxophones again, but we won't go there. But that was it was a lot of fun to be a part. It was very frustrating at first, but it was as we worked through it, it was incredibly fun to be a part of this sort of a collaborative effort.
How about you, Vince? What were some of the challenges? Not the challenges yet. We're talking about what was your approach to doing this?
Yeah, well, I got to echo a lot of what Mike said. I remember at the beginning of this process thinking, how can we write something for a situation that's going to be unpredictable every time in every different school or every different classroom? And that was a real challenge for me. And again, when I'm looking at that Flex template score, you know, and so as I started taking my band piece, Where Stand the Dauntless, and taking the parts and inserting them into the Flex score, I realized that when I compose, my creative process, when I compose in a regular concert band template score, I'm thinking in you know, this wonderful shimmering woodwind sound that I can get here, and you know, augment it with some rhythmic part that's happening underneath it. And the process in the Flex template was much more I really have to think of part writing. That this has to work as, you know, a quintet, a quartet, if I have 4 flutes or 4 tenor saxes, or a mixture of any of these instruments. And that was the real challenge. So, you know, as Mike said, watching the ranges of, for example, you know, tenor sax not going too low. Do you put a different harmony note, or do you just double that note down the octave? And what does that do to the line, you know, of the tenor sax part doing this and then all of a sudden jumping, or the clarinet? So there were so many variables,
yeah,
that we had to think through. The conversation, we should have recorded the conversation, you know, the email trails between all of us. I'm sure it would have been something to archive in the Library of Congress. But how did they do that? You know, it's kind of like MC Escher, those drawings where they, you know, you can't figure out what is the
well, I think what you're part of what you're alluding to is the first conversations about this was somewhat philosophical, right? It's because it's a different mindset, and that was a lot of my. And that the first thing I did, just so for our viewers that are watching, I had one-on-one conversations with everybody that was contributing to this, and said, "Here's the approach. Let's talk about this. It is a different mindset. We do have to think linearly because we want to answer these questions from teachers of kids having opportunities." To me, it correlated very quickly to string orchestra writing, and it correlated to brass quintet writing and things of that nature, woodwind quintet writing, where you do think linearly. And how can we preserve that soundscape? How can we preserve those other parts of what we love about musical texture in a 4 or 5 part? It was a challenge, you know, almost like a puzzle.
Right.
And I think that's...
Well, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that when you write anything, you know, the final product, you want to make it as musical as possible. You know, to write a lyrical line, or, you know, linearly, something melodic, and how that contributes to harmony. So just the 2 different ways of approaching that. I mean, when I went back to writing a regular concert band piece, it was like my brain went, "Oh, okay, this is so easy."
That's right.
I can do whatever I want.
And I can tell you from the editorial side, I just finished editing a regular concert band piece, and there weren't 40 parts to prove. So that felt really nice too. There were only 27. Okay, just to prep on the videos that we're about to show, one of the common things that I was getting from a lot of the arrangers and composers for these were emails saying when they listened to these on playback in the score sets, they said, "I'm really surprised. It sounds really cool as a flute quintet. It sounds so." The fear turned into some excitement, and I think that's what we're going to kind of demonstrate a little bit now. Mike, why don't you talk a little bit about derivations and how we're going to hear that?
Yeah. So when we were looking at the score sets earlier, you got a sense of, you know, how the instruments break down. We're going to actually listen to the beginning of the fast section of my piece, Derivations, and it's going to just be low brass, and it's 5 parts. So you're going to hear how it would sound just with low brass instruments playing all the parts, and with the percussion. And let's take a listen.
have to tell you that the bass drum sounds like a real live student bass drum. It's so loud.
Or, yeah. Building a house. Yes.
Those are no performer sounds, and I really like the way that they sound. That bass drum.
Yeah, and actually, it sounded like part 3 on that was being doubled up the octave too. So, but that's cool. I mean, we got a sense of how that all fit together. But you can see that the piece works great in a chamber music setting because of how we approach doing this. I really feel because of how all the discussions that we had and how we set the templates up and the discussions that ensued because of this that we were able to create this. And that's going to can we take a listen to Vince's?
Yeah, Vince, why don't you talk a little bit about Where Stand the Dauntless and the version we're going to listen to.
All right. Well, this was a commission piece that I wrote for a middle school band here in the Toronto area. Great program. And so now I wrote it in the regular concert band. I conceived of it as a regular concert band score. And so then converting it over, with all of the different possibilities, what you're going to hear now is just the string parts. So, all violins, violas, cellos, basses, and percussion. We'll hear about a minute of it. And so these note performer sounds, again, are, if you're familiar with note performer, sounds for Finale and Sibelius. I tend to think that the note performer sounds sound better on the band instrument side, but you'll get a good idea of the piece here. Starts out with a fanfare and then into it.
I thought that sounded really cool, Vince.
Yep.
The demo that I'm going to show is Ride Through the Valley. It's this slower section in the middle. You'll hear a couple minutes of that. And it's with a variety of instruments. I picked, I don't even remember. I'll have to show you when the video comes on. But imagine you just had one of each. You're going to notice at the higher level, we did allow for some divisi. And in that case, you would, if you didn't have the extra students for the divisi notes for the extended harmonies, you would just pick one of them, and whichever one works better for you, and that's totally okay. All right, here's a little bit of Ride Through the Valley. I stopped it right before the glissando because that doesn't sound so great in no performer or any other part. That's a quick sample of what those sound like. with various instruments. And I've tried it, just clicking on and off different ones to see how they sound. And it's pretty exciting. We do want to give you a couple of minutes to add up any other questions so far based on all the information we have given you so far about this series. Throw some more questions in the chat box, and we're going to come back to that in a second. While we wait for those questions, one more question for Vince and Mike to share, which is, how did you feel at the beginning of this project, and how do you feel now?
I felt really scared at the beginning because I had no idea. It was just uncharted territory, and it was an interesting project. It was a learning process, working through all of the different suggestions and changes that we made. But now I feel like it's not that bad at all. It's kind of easy, actually. You know, it's always good, I find, to think a different way, if for no other reason than it informs the way you normally think. And it just, you know, you might go back to the way you normally think, but you have this other perspective now that is very, very instructive. I also just want to say one thing about those, you know, the template where you put on the left side of the page where all the names, I mean, that's helpful in itself just to know who's playing what, but extremely helpful, even more so if you have multiple classes coming in. I mean, if you have, you know, 3 or 4 classes and that you're using that particular piece in, you always know the flutes are going to play this part and the trumpets are going to play that part. But when it's such a the mix is just so unpredictable, to have a student name on every class that comes in, you can have, you know, a different template there. Just so, oh, this is my second period class. Okay, where's that? Put that on the score, and you have all the kids. Because will they, you know, want to play the same part, maybe necessarily on the next class, you know? But you can remember all that. So I think that was quite brilliant.
Cool. How about you, Mike? How did you feel at the beginning and now at the end?
Oh man, that was when we first started discussing this. I couldn't get my head wrapped around it at first, and then. Like I alluded to earlier, like just seeing the blank page, blanks measures on the score, like putting it all together, it was really daunting and it was really overwhelming. But once we worked through it, and like I said, that collaborative effort from all of us together, it really helped. And then once I got the first, I did Great Beginnings first, I think is what we did. Once I got that one, kind of the ball rolling on that, and I saw how it all fit together and how this was going to work. Then when I went and worked on derivations, it was a lot easier, and I had a great idea of how the concept of the whole series. And I think it's given me a different appreciation for writing and how we write for young musicians, because now I'm thinking of it in a totally different way. Even though I just did a grade 2 band piece for the next season, I was still thinking about, okay, well, if I have to adapt this one down the line, how am I going to do that? How is that going to work? So I didn't change how I wrote differently to accommodate that, but I started thinking in those terms already with the writing that I am doing now. So yeah, it makes you think differently. Yeah,
it sure does. And it makes me think a lot differently too. And I had those same, I think we're all, I hate to say it, fear driven, you know, and that happens. And you have to have the courage to face the fear. You know, you get a great idea and then comes the next phase, which is, oh my gosh, how do I do this? And I think that happens with every project we do. And this time it was just even more exciting.
Chris, what did I say to you in the last webinar? Everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear.
That's right. That's right.
In flex arrangements.
Yeah.
All right, we do have a few questions. I'm gonna answer some of those as best as I can now. Rachel asks, is there more music being written in this style, more grade 2.5 and up? The answer is, let's see how these work. Yes is the answer. We did the pieces that we did. There are 21 titles that are coming out. We're 3 titles away from finalized, and they're going to be flying off the shelf almost immediately. So they'll be out here very soon. The approach initially was to look at our 2020 catalog and to pick a variety of styles and a variety of grade levels as companion products to the 2020 catalog that was just released. How does it look going forward? It's a question mark. Let's see. How does this work? I think companion products work really well. If people love them, maybe we can look at previous bestsellers and see if they can adapt. I think they have to naturally adapt to this. We don't want to make an awkward fit. There's going to be some pieces of music that just won't work. And actually, I believe the first thing that I sent to all the composers was, hey,
say that, yeah.
Will this work? I sent, here's what I think. Can you please check this out and let me know if it works? They may not all work that way. But yes, we're trying it. And I do want to continue to explore this because I feel this is valuable in the current time, and I believe it's going to be valuable moving forward with all of our teaching situations. Are these titles available for purchase and a recording online? These pieces will work with the original recordings. So they are companion products that will play along with them, even though the part might be different. The trumpet part is different than the B flat part too. Just they're different pieces, but they will work together. They're going to be available for purchase as soon as we hit the print button, which is going to be in the next week or two. Will they sound okay as duets or trios, or all 5 parts necessary? I think by nature of the complexity of the pieces, you do need the parts, the minimum number of parts that are on there. If it's a 4-part, you'll need the 4 parts, and then the 5 parts. However, there might be a piece here and there that might work, that would require a little further analysis. But for sure, you need the percussion track to fill in some of those gaps so that a student can play along with that and feel great, and also play along in Smart Music. These are going to go up in Smart Music as fast as humanly possible, and I do believe they'll be really well received there. How much of the cost? The price point on these are going to be somewhat correlative to the original product. Interestingly, when you do a flex product, which is 5 parts, which sounds like a little bit, when you add up the number of pages, it's enormous. So the price point is going to be relative to the original. It's going to be somewhere between $55 and $75, depending on the number of parts, which is the page count, essentially. And again, remember, what we're including are 2 copies of the primary parts, and then 1 copy of each of the supplementary parts. And then you copy as you need them. If you have 14 violin ones, go ahead and make your 14 copies, knock yourself out. So we have that on there for you. And that's kind of factored into the cost as well. Have you considered creating an option for changing the key so string players don't have to play in flat keys? What a great question. That did come up as we were writing these. And, you know, these could spark another product. Maybe this sparks a string orchestra only product. But the concept of this is to work on a mixture and to be a companion product. So we had to live in the flat keys. So our answer to that was, let's editorially mark the daylights out of this so that teachers have help and so that students have help to be able to play in those flat keys. And I'll be honest with you, because you may or may not know, I spent the past year as the string editor, and editing string music, you literally have to play all of the parts to get it right. And then I question everything, and I run it by people that know far more than me, and we collaborate in that regard. So I did the same thing with these. I played all these parts, and if something's hard for me as a native trumpet player, if something's hard for me to do on violin or cello, then it's going to be hard for a student. So I would ask Danae or Jim, can you guys help me out here, and let's make sure that we do this right to try to give support. That's the goal. Let's see. Will distribution be available via ePrint? Don't quote me on this, but I believe it will be distributed via ePrint, and I believe it will also be with the print function within Smart Music. I'm not 100% on that, so please don't hold me to it, but I do believe that that is where we are headed with this. We want to make this available to you in the form that you need it and as quickly as you can get it. All right, I think I have all the questions. I will also say, if there are, in terms of teacher support and guidance, we are all accessible. All the composers that you will see that are in this series or anything in our Alfred and Belwin catalog, we are available to be in touch. Find us on email, send an email, ask a question, and we'll get back to you. My email is cbernotas@alfred.com. Send an email with a question, and if I can help you in some way, I want to. We want to create things that you need. I was a teacher for 28 years, and I just stopped teaching, and actually I continue to teach. We all just learned together how to write a Flex series. So even after my teaching career, we continue to teach. So please feel free to continue with those questions. The next thing I have to tell you, I have to thank, of course, Vince and Mike for being here with me. Even though you can notice that Vince is wearing a Red Sox shirt. The very quick story is I started this. Yeah, Nats. They're the wrong league.
Yeah.
I'm actually a Toronto Blue Jays fan. I just wore this to bug Chris.
We started today. I was wearing a nice shirt, and I saw Vince wearing his Red Sox shirt, so I literally ran upstairs and came back to get this. And then Mike ran and got his Nats shirt. But anyway, please take a look. We're going to share with you a list of all the titles, the 21 titles that are going to be released. You can see that in the chat. They don't have product pages yet, but they will as soon as they're released. But you can at least see the titles that are coming very, very soon. And to get the free percussion download, you're going to go on the product page. There will be a downloadable link right on that. Also want to tell you that there is a certificate of attendance for joining us today. Oh, good. Mike is putting his email in the chat. Vince, put your email in the chat as well so that we can get contact there. You see the certificate of attendance. If you can get some PD for joining us today, that would be wonderful. Print that out and please submit it for your administration. And also the survey, what you think matters. And we really care about customer input, thoughts. You are our teachers. You are our voice. And we want to hear your voice. And it really means something to us. So please take a minute to fill out the survey and let us know. What did you think? What could we do better? If you have any ideas, please feel free to share. Vince has very thick skin. I do think that is... Go ahead.
But darn fine ears.
Oh, and a head of hair. Look at that hair.
And a head of hair.
Right?
That's right.
Look at this. Man. Look at this. 60 years old.
Look at my highlights, my silver highlights.
No gray, and it's all there.
All right. We're going to end with something very special, which is when you come up with something that you think is going to work, until you put it to the test, you're not really sure. So a great former colleague of mine, Mr. Ryan Price from the Mountain Lakes High School, or actually Mountain Lakes School District in New Jersey, which is where I taught. I asked him if he would mind giving a try to a little bit of Ride Through the Valley on trombone. And he provided a little bit of the ending of it for us. So to end out, here is Ryan Price playing a little bit of Ride Through the Valley on trombone. Thanks for joining us.